Welcome back to Lessons Learned. I'm Sherry, and today we're making mug rugs, and this is the first one we're going to make that I'm showing you here with some pieced strips, and there's the back. These are 7-inch squares that we're starting out with. There's my pieced strip that's 2.5 inches about. It doesn't have to be exactly that. Just need enough to cover your piece of batting that we're going to sew on. There I'm showing you how I piece my scraps onto adding machine tape, and this is perfect for this project. So a few months ago I started this project with these pinks and blacks, and this is my leftover stuff. So I need 7-inch squares here, one of batting, one of backing. And I'm just going to sew directly on that piece of batting, and the first strip goes right side up, and I'm just going to tack it down along the edge about 1/4 inch or less. Doesn't have to be super precise, definitely not more than 1/4 inch. So that's how you get started with this. I have black thread in for this just because that seemed to go well with this color scheme. The next strip will go over top of that one, and we'll sew a 1/4 inch seam. So right sides together now. Sew another 1/4 inch seam. I back stitch a little bit in the beginning and the end just to kind of lock it in place. It's optional. I'm cutting off the excess there from the bottom and getting ready to do my third strip. 3 2.5 inch strips are just about perfect for a 7-inch piece of batting. So now I'm opening that up, the right side's showing, and I have that one more strip to lay down, right sides together, and another 1/4 inch seam. See how that's going to happen there? I'm kind of testing out the color variation, and yes, I did pick that big black piece to go on the mug rug, so I don't know if that was the right choice, but I think it turned out okay, as you'll see later on. Another 1/4 inch seam here. And then I'm going to trim my thread tails and cut the excess off of that strip that I don't need. Except I was so excited to get that open to show you that I didn't cut it off first. That's okay. Okay. And I had a little bit of extra I needed to trim off there, just right up next to the batting. Don't cut into the batting when you go to trim. And you can see there on that strip there's a little bit extra that hung over. So it's not exactly 3 strips that are exactly the same width, but you're not going to be able to really perceive that on the overall project. So somewhere around a 2.5 inch, 2 1/4 inch strip will get you across a 7-inch piece of batting. Okay, so looking good. That's it. The front is done. You could put some more quilting on it at this point if you wanted. Now I'm going to put my backing on, and I'm doing right sides together. And I need to leave an opening there, as I'm indicating. And make sure and back stitch as you start and end this run of stitching. And we're just going to do 1/4 inch and then pivot on the corners at 1/4 inch and keep going. So there's not going to be any complicated binding to go on this mug rug. Just going to be Doing some simple seams here to get it together. Turn it right side out and then top stitch it. So easy. Here I'm turning again. Now I'm just estimating that 1/4 inch. You can pin this, you can clip it. I'm confident enough to trust myself to hold it all in place with my fingers. As you can see here, just follow the edges of your back piece there with that 1/4 inch seam. And here I'm coming up on my opening that I want to leave, so I'm back stitching there. Alright, so look how fast this goes together. Since we're going to be doing some top stitching really close to the edge, once we turn this, I'm using my pinking shears to clip those edges and the corners. And I'm taking off about half of that 1/4 inch seam allowance. So just make sure you don't get too close to your stitching line and accidentally cut into it. But you can basically take about half of that off. This takes out the bulk of the batting that's in there and the 2 pieces of fabric. So you just have those 3 layers. But if you can take the bulk out doing this, it would be a good thing. If you don't want to do that, simply snip your corners and go ahead and turn it. I did not pink the opening. I just jumped over to the other side there. So now it's time to turn it right side out. So I just reached down in there, kind of scooting my thumb under the backing and then turning out that corner, and I'm pushing it out with my finger, which you can't see because I got it out of frame, but then I have my point turner there as well. You can use a skewer or any other tool that you have in your sewing room to turn out a nice corner. And for some reason, I don't know why I do this, but I always do. As soon as I get a corner visible, I start poking at it. But you can turn the whole thing inside out first and then poke out your corners. I was just really anxious to do it. I wanted to see those nice sharp corners. Don't poke too hard or you'll poke all the way through your stitches and you'll have a hole. So just be very gentle and just poke out those corners. Now you've got your opening there and you want to turn that in 1/4 of an inch, both sides of it, and then also work out your side seams. You can take it to the iron. I didn't even iron this here. I did iron it afterwards when it was completely done, but if you want to make sure you get those seams out nice and even, you can iron it. And then this opening here, I'm going to stick a couple of pins in it to hold it in place as I top stitch it. So for these seams, I'm using about a 2/0 stitch length, but for this top stitching that I'm getting ready to do, I move it up to 3. And all we're going to do is stitch all the way around the edges about 1/8 of an inch, or as close as to the edge as you want to get. 1/8 of an inch or even less if you want to just really put it on the edge. It's up to you. So here I go. We're almost done. Not sure why I paused so much there. I'm trying to sneak up on that corner so that I don't go past it. And I'm just going a stitch at a time. Okay, now I'm getting out my stiletto, part of my seam ripper, and I'm going to guide that corner in since there's a little more bulk there. And all you have to do is just stick the point of your stiletto into the corner but not under the needle, and just kind of push it just very gently at the beginning, and then you're good to go. I'm sneaking up on that next corner, stitch by stitch. There's my stiletto to help me get that through there so my stitches don't bog down and get real small there at the corner because it won't go through. Nice even 3.0 stitches, top stitching. Closing in on that corner again. And this is the last one, and this is the one where the pins are. So I'm not going to run over my pins. I'll start to take those 2 pins out. Still holding it firmly so that my opening doesn't fly open on me. And you might say, well, there's no stitching, there's no quilting on the back of it. That's okay. Who looks at the back of a mug rug? Nobody. So, you know, all your quilting is on top. It's kind of a quilt as you go method here. And like I said before, if you want to add more stitching to the top to make it more quilty looking, do that before you put your back on. I'm going to clip my threads down really close so that I get a good finish there, because this is the end of this one. Next, I'm going to show you one made of selvages. There we go. Isn't that cute? So easy. It's got lots of personality with that scrappiness. Here's my selvage one that I did. Exact same method, other than I'm going to show you how to add on the selvages. You need 8 to 10 selvages depending on how wide your selvages are. And I always cut the pieces that have a lot of writing on them. Here's what I do too, just as busy work in my sewing room. I will pre-sew on some selvages to some plain fabric, and then I can cut that down to my 7-inch size if I want to, or whatever size I need for a project. 7 inches of batting again, and 7 inches of backing. Here's my first one. I'm going to the bottom, so my words are facing upward from the bottom. And just to get started here, I am going to put a line of stitching right where that design of fabric starts. I probably went back to 2.0 or 2.5 at this point. You could do 3 on it. You probably could do a 3 top stitch length. This one has a lot of extra fabric with it, so I'm going to let that show. As you put each selvage on, you're just going to leave a little bit of your fabric design on there. And now I'm sewing the bottom of the selvage and catching in the top of the last selvage that I just sewed. See here, the next one, I'm going to let a little more of that fabric show on the prior one. About right there. And I'm just going to make sure my stitch line goes through both selvages and through the batting. So I'm checking that. I'm going to make it right where that fringe starts. You know how your selvages has a little fringy edge to it? Just sew right above that. That way you're not sewing through your words that's on the selvage piece there. A lot of selvages have sayings, they have the designer on there, they have the fabric name. Sometimes they have the color registration. I think I have one coming up like that. Not this one though. So just overlap a little bit, making sure that you catch in both pieces, the prior selvage and the next one. avoid sewing through the words. There's really not a whole lot of rules about sewing selvages. I don't even know if there's any rules. You basically just have to have some sort of base to sew them down to, and after that you can just kind of put them on there willy-nilly however you want. This is how I do it. There's the one with the color registration on it. That's all the colors that's in that fabric. So I chose that portion of the selvage on this one. And put my needle down just below those little circles. That way we can see them. You'll see that there's a little extra hanging off that end. We'll be trimming that down. Now here's a Ruby Star Society selvage, and they have nice big colorful ones. So I try to show as much of that as I can, and I wanted to get the whole word speckled on there, so I ended up cutting off Ruby Star Society a little bit, or whatever that says there. Might have been the designer's name, I'm not sure. There again, I'm sewing underneath the word speckled. These are so much fun, and you can use them for all kinds of projects. Getting close to the edge now. Just have one more, I think, after this one. So there again, I'm making sure my bottom one and my top one are overlapped enough that I can sew underneath the words. There's my last one. Now I'm going to end up cutting off that fabric design there, but I'm keeping the birds. So I decided to go ahead and trim that one some so that I could just have a piece wide enough to use for that last little area. So I'm taking off a little bit of the white as well because I don't need that. And then I think I'll take some of the blue off too. Let me see. Yes, I decided to trim that. And when you get to the last one like that, you may have to pick something different than what you normally thought you were going to use because of the size, or you can just trim it down to what you want like I just did. So I'm just going to sew that down. I may have actually sewn through the birds on this one, but it was going to get caught. Some of the birds were going to get caught in the seam allowance anyway when we put our backing on. So let's see what I do here. Yep, I had to move over. I might be just, yeah, I'm going right through the middle of the birds. That's okay. That's okay. I'm using white thread on this one. A lot less likely to show up on those selvages. Okay, so there we are. Now I'm going to take my rotary cutter and trim this up good, making sure that I don't catch any of that batting under the rotary cutter, just the excess fabric and threads that are hanging over the edge. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. There we go. That just gets trashed. I don't save those little teeny tiny pieces. I save a lot of scraps, but I'm not going to save that. Okay, there we are. Here's our cute mug rug, well on its way to being done. Isn't that cute? Love it. Love selvages. Don't underestimate selvages. You can do a lot with them. So there's my 7-inch backing, and I put right sides together. Getting ready to sew. You definitely want a 2.0 stitch on this. Leave enough for your opening, as I'm indicating there. A couple inches, whatever you can get 2 fingers down into. Notice I didn't pin or clip. You can certainly do that. I'm just kind of holding very steady with my fingers, everything in place, making sure there's no wrinkles or folds in the fabric anywhere. And it seems to be going along pretty well doing that. I'm going to sneak up on my corner. These are 1/4 inch seams. Everything's laying nice and flat and even, so I'm not having any problems just holding that in place. It's because it's a small amount of fabric. So pinning is fine. I hate pins. I inevitably stick myself with a pin. But on this little project, the only thing I used pins on was to pin closed the opening for the top stitching. So I'm just doing some thread trimming here. I'm getting ready to take my pinking shears to it, clipping the corners, and taking off some of that seam allowance. If you don't have pinking shears, you can use just straight scissors for that. But pinking shears work really well because it takes a lot of the bulk out. And they make a really cool sound when you cut with them, if you're into that sort of thing. Okay, so I did not pink my opening. And the reason why I don't is because it's too hard to fold it over once you pink it. So here I am turning it right side out. Working on those corners with the point turner. It looks like I'm really going at it hard, but I'm being very careful because that, even though that's plastic and not super sharp, it will bust right through your corner if you do it too hard. This is a very good gift to give to a fellow quilter or someone who sews, because undoubtedly your selvages will not be anything they've ever had. So they would appreciate, you know, seeing what you've been working on. There I am trying to maneuver those seam allowances in the opening so that I can pin them closed and do my top stitching. They'll fight you a little bit sometimes, but just work at it until you get it looking nice and straight along the edge. You don't want a whole bunch of it dipping in or a bunch of it sticking out beyond the edge. Okay, clips would work as well, wonder clips. But for some reason today I used pins. So I'm changing my stitch length to 3 for a top stitch. I'm just starting randomly anywhere, back stitching a little bit, and about 1/8 of an inch or less off the edge there. Some of my corners seem to turn out a little rounded with these selvages, and sometimes I just maneuvered my top stitching in a little bit of a round stitch. I think on this particular one, I don't know if it was because the selvages were a little bulkier than the other fabric I was using on the other one, but I kind of rounded my top stitching. So either way, you can do it either way. Just make sure you're consistent in the width away from the edge, and that way it'll look nice and neat and professional. Here again, you could do some extra quilting on top of your selvages, some meandering or some lines in the opposite direction. Just do it before you put your backing on. I'm getting those thread tails out of the way so they don't get hung up in my last few stitches. There we go. Back stitch a little bit. And there it is. I probably should have used black in the bobbin, but that's okay. It's cute. Just depends on if you want the stitching to show or not. I was trying to match. Neaten it up a little bit, make sure I get all my thread tails off. And look how cute that is. I love it. Here it is on my desk with my favorite mug. And there's even enough room on there for a little snack if you wanted. I don't eat snacks anymore, but if you wanted a biscotti or a cookie or two on there, there's room for that. And I think that turned out great. Here's the other one. Very cute, very practical, and a great gift to give